Hello again, everyone. Hope you're doing all right today. Got another pint with me. I'll begrudgingly set that aside for the moment because we're going to be reading from none other than Alice in Wonderland. Look at that. Throughout this whole book, there's these little illustrations sprinkled. Look at that. I mean, that's pretty cool. Let me see if I can find you another one here. Oh yeah, I mean, you have to love it. It's fun. It's a fun book. Oh yes, and this is one of my favorite characters, Caterpillar, smoking the hookah. Good stuff. Okay, so I'm not gonna be delving into many of the rich gems in this book, though there are many. You know, I have to say it was not a favorite of mine at all. Not the movie, not the book, until the last couple pages of the book, and that's what I'm going to be reading to you. It took the book, I told my wife, from maybe like 5 out of 10 to like an 8 out of 10 or 7.5 out of 10. It's a pretty good book if you have the right lens through which to read it, and that lens is given to you at the very end, and so you kind of have this retrospective satisfaction with the whole book. It's a great ending. It's even better than a twist ending. You know, a twist ending, Brandon Sanderson describes it like, the author promises you something, and then at the end they give you something even greater. So imagine you're a kid on Christmas, and all year you've been asking for a toy car, and instead they give you like one of those cars that you can ride. You know, it's like even better than a little toy car, but it's the thing you wanted. It's just even better. So it's even better than a twist. It's like a tying up of everything into a nice bow. All your scrambled brain throughout, and it's a confusing book, intentionally confusing book. All of your scrambled brain kind of organizes into one clear picture, and you get the moral of the story in a punch. You know, it's very satisfying like that. So, for context here, I'm going to be reading just the end of her dream, Alice's dream. And in this scene, she's in the courtroom, and she stands up, quite literally, as a large girl again. She stands up against the queen, calls out the facade, this sort of weird kangaroo court, and then the pack of cards all come fluttering down on her, and she wakes up. Okay, so we'll pick up there, and then, we'll read on. At this, the whole pack rose up into the air and came flying down upon her. She gave a little scream, half of fright and half of anger, and tried to beat them off, and found herself lying on the bank with her head in the lap of her sister, who was gently brushing away some dead leaves that had fluttered down from the trees on her face. "Wake up, Alice, dear," said her sister. "Why, what a long sleep you've had." "Oh, I've had such a curious dream," said Alice. I gotta wet my palate here a little bit. "I've had such a curious dream," said Alice. And she told her sister, as well as she could remember them, all these strange adventures of hers that you have been reading about. You know how dreams are elusive and you forget. And when she had finished, her sister kissed her and said, "It was a curious dream, dear, certainly. But now run into your tea. It's getting late. The duties call." So Alice got up and ran off, thinking while she ran, as well she might, what a wonderful dream it had been. But her sister sat still, just as she left her. So now we get the whole story was from Alice's point of view. Now we're getting a different point of view, which just adds to this shock. We were very sharply and abruptly transitioning from the dream to the real world, and then sharply turning from her perspective to her sister's. But her sister sat just as she had left her, leaning her head on her hands, watching the setting sun, and thinking of little Alice and all her wonderful adventures, till she too began dreaming after a fashion, and this was her dream. First she dreamed of little Alice herself. Once again the tiny hands were clasped upon her knees, and the bright, eager eyes were looking up into hers. She could hear the very tones of her voice and see that queer little toss of her head to keep back the wandering hair that would always get into her eyes. And still, as she listened, or seemed to listen, the whole place around her became alive with strange creatures of her little sister's dream. The long grass rustled at her feet as the white rabbit hurried by. The frightened mouse splashed his way through the neighboring pool. She could hear the rattle of the teacups as the March Hare and his friends shared their never-ending meal, and the shrill voice of the queen ordering off her unfortunate guests to execution. Once more the pig baby was sneezing on the duchess's knee, while plates and dishes crashed around it. Once more the shriek of the griffin, the squeaking of the lizard's slate pencil, and the choking of the suppressed guinea pigs filled the air, mixed with the distant sob of the mock turtle. It's so wonderful. She's taking you through the whole story. You get reminded of everything, and you kind of get nostalgic for it. So she sat on with closed eyes and half believed herself in Wonderland, though she knew she had but to open them again, and all would change to dull reality. The grass would only be rustling in the wind, and the pool rippling to the waving of reeds. The rattling teacups would change to the tinkling sheep bells, and the queen's shrill cries to the voice of the shepherd boy. And the sneeze of the baby, the shriek of the griffin, and all the other queer noises would change, she knew, to the confused clamor of a busy farmyard, while the lowing of the cattle in the distance would take the place of the mock turtle's heavy sobs. Lastly, she pictured to herself how this same little sister of hers would, in the aftertime, be herself a grown woman, and how she would keep through all her riper years the simple and loving heart of her childhood. How she would gather, and how she would gather about her other little children and make their eyes bright and eager with many a strange tale, perhaps even with the dream of Wonderland of long ago, and how she would feel with all their simple sorrows, and find a pleasure in all their simple joys, remembering her own child life and the happy summer days. That's splendid. So her sister is supposed to be us. If you didn't know, we're supposed to be looking back on our childhoods, because this book is for children, but it's also very much for adults. And so reading this, we're supposed to look back on those crazy times. I mean, I remember going through the woods that I grew up in a property with some woods out back, and I remember going through those woods and making trees alive with my mind and imagining their arms trying to grab me. And the world of a child is quite perplexing, and it's confusing, much like a dream. I mean, that's the whole point of the story, is to draw an analogy between a child's inner thought life and the dream that we all have as adults, which can be sometimes confusing. But confusing is not the same thing as meaningless. Dreams often carry a lot of meaning, and a child's life is sometimes more rich with meaning than even the scholar's life, because they're sensing the deep reality, the undercurrents of everything that goes on around us. And they're playing with those ideas in these imaginative, anthropomorphized ways. It runs deep, very deep, almost like animalistic, And so that's what we're getting here. And her little sister is just hoping and almost certain that her little sister, Alice, will one day grow up and still retain that curiosity, that she doesn't lose her childhood, that she can still be creative and still empathize with the children that hopefully she'll have, and instill that same thing in them. And what's more, she'll be able to recount to them her adventures in Wonderland, and see through that haze of childhood to the meaning that they're all sort of imperfectly reaching toward, and help organize their thoughts around these things, which is the goal of any parent, is to be that organizing framework in which to place these jigsaw pieces of their confused puzzle and make heads and tails of all of it. So, I mean, this story is so rich with symbolism that it would take multiple episodes to get through it. But, I'll leave you with that. I think that's good enough for one day, and I hope that you can retain a little bit of your curiosity, your wonder, and make the real world a wonderland of your own. And hopefully you can take elements of this and apply it to your spiritual life too. For me, I've gained a lot from ceasing to look at the world as a place with mundane objects in it that all throughout is sprinkled little nuggets of spiritual truth or spiritual wisdom or spiritual facts. Instead, I organize my day differently. I'm really walking through a spiritual world, encountering mundane things. Sort of the difference between us being bodies with a spirit instead of us being spirits with bodies, you know. And another thing that helps me is, this helps me pursue holiness, I think. Imagining my day when I wake up as I get to do these certain holy things, and I'm chasing from one to the other. This is like my list of errands, my to-do list for the day, you know. I'm going to first say my morning prayers, and then I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to thank God for the food, and then we're going to, you know, open the Bible when I get home from work, and then I'm going to, later on in the day after my workout, I'm going to pray a rosary, and then before bed, we're going to pray for the children, or, you know, we're going to go to Eucharistic adoration. And, you know, there's things that are in between those, like going to work or exercising, but those aren't the substance of my day. It's the holy things I'm chasing. And if you're constantly going from one holy thing to another, it's very hard to get sidelined with temptations. And so it's the same thing with Alice in Wonderland. You know, we have to stay in that spiritual world, the world of dreams, the world of children. You know, we must become like children in order to enter the kingdom of God. So, yeah, it's a sense, it's even deeper than the story probably was originally meant to be, by Lewis Carroll. So I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Enjoy that, and maybe pick up a copy of this for yourself. Take care.